Am I the jerk for refusing to support my family after my wife laughed at their announcement? I'm a 27-year-old guy married to a wonderful woman, Maria, who's 26. Let me rewind to something that happened when I was 17. My girlfriend at the time ended up cheating on me with my brother. We'd been together since kindergarten, even if our relationship felt more like a childhood friendship until high school. When we decided to date seriously, things seemed good for about a year, until my brother confessed that he and my girlfriend had been secretly seeing each other. It tore me apart, especially since my parents knew about it but shrugged it off as if it wasn't serious. This, despite the fact that I was the one who told them first. After that, I decided to cut ties emotionally and focus entirely on my studies, moving out of my parents' home as soon as I could, particularly since they couldn't even respect basic boundaries when it came to family loyalty. My ex later tried to apologize and suggested we stay friends, but I completely ignored her. Once I graduated, I moved to Texas at 19 and only kept in touch with my family around holidays. 2 years later, I met Amira at a bakery owned by her mom. We took our time to build trust before making it official after a year of dating. Maria and Amira hit it off instantly and developed a strong bond with my family. Our wedding was nothing short of amazing. I did extend an invitation to my parents and brother, even called them the day before, but they chose not to show up. I promised myself then that I'd always back my wife, no matter the circumstances, even if she's wrong. So, a week ago, my mom rang me up wanting to talk. I had her on speaker since Maria and I were cooking together. Given my family's history of backing my brother no matter what, I didn't see any issue letting my wife listen in. After all, my family's conversations usually revolve around my brother anyway. My mom proceeded to tell me that my brother and my ex-girlfriend were getting married and that he wanted me to be his best man. There was a moment of stunned silence before Maria burst out laughing, and I couldn't help but laugh too. My mom abruptly ended the call, and I didn't bother calling back. Instead, I spent the rest of the evening enjoying time with my wife. This morning, I woke up to a barrage of furious texts from my dad and brother saying I upset my mom and made her cry by not stopping my wife from laughing. I honestly don't think I did anything wrong. Technically, I didn't even do anything, and while I can see how it might come off as immature, it wasn't something I planned. So, am I the asshole for not siding with my mom? Before you read the update, let me share some comments I got. Why would your mom even ask you to be the best man for your brother? That's super bizarre. Why wouldn't that come from him? Obviously, I'm not the jerk here. Laughing was probably the best reaction to have in that situation. I even came across a story about a guy who agreed to be the best man and then gave a speech that aired out all the cheating history. He dropped the mic and walked off. That could always be an option, I guess. But in my case, she was just delivering the message on his behalf. Another commenter, Teddy, pointed out the irony that they skipped my wedding, yet I'm supposed to stand by for his. Did they even explain why they didn't show up? I'd guess it's because they don't want to answer awkward questions about why I wasn't at my brother's wedding. They're probably just trying to save face. They claimed my brother was too sick to travel, so they stayed back with him. Then Tab chimed in, saying my wife's laughter was justified given everything I'd been through, and I made the right call sticking by her side. I couldn't agree more. The only thing that seems to make sense is that my brother wanted me as his best man just to rub salt in the wound, especially since my parents didn't even come to my own wedding. Here's the update. After a week of receiving nasty texts from my dad and brother, I finally decided to call my brother to confront him about how hypocritical it was to skip my wedding but expect me to be at his. Turns out some of you were spot on. He never wanted to attend my wedding. My mom just spun some story instead of being honest, and as it turns out, he never asked me to be his best man in the first place. When I confronted my mom about it, she admitted she was just trying to patch things up between us and wanted her boys to get along again. Even if I accepted the now fake offer. If I hadn't been invited, this scenario would have turned out even worse. I made the decision to have a good future for my wife. I'll be restricting touch with my relatives. I've also noted in the comments that my wife is expecting, so I have something to look forward to. Instead of a crap show, Amara and I appreciate the warm sentiments from a few of you. Update 2. I believe I released the first update last night or yesterday, I can't recall. But hey again, The issue has now expanded to my wife's side of the family. My ex's friend located the individual. I imagine the word traveled quickly, and I was now receiving texts from my immediate family, my ex, and my brother's pals. I ignored it at first until some really terrible things were made about my wife's family and pregnancy, causing her to have a panic attack since she couldn't calm down. I'm not sure if I could express what they said because it was so nasty and bigoted. I quote Vagon from sending minimal text messages to ignoring my entire family. I've chosen to switch my phone off completely, but I do admire every one of you. But I'm going to spend this time with my wife and her family, and we're now focused on the pregnancy and preparing for 9 months of fun and strange cravings. Update 3. Hi. Exactly 21 days ago. I have made the best decision of my life. I'm simply delivering a quick update. One of my family members is no longer in my life. 2. My wife viewed the post and comments, and while she loves all of you, she was offended that I stated that. She giggled. She wanted me to make it clear that it was a full cackle. 3. Our tiny kid is developing and well. We hope for a girl, but that is all. Thank you again, everyone. We adore you. Story, update. I will be leaving my adoptive family overnight. I will abandon them. There will be a letter. Original post. I am an 18-year-old boy who was adopted by my family when I was 5. I don't even know my biological parents. The family already had 3 kids. 3 girls, presumably following the first girl, attempted for a male but always ended up with a girl. So after 3 daughters, they adopted me to finally have a male. He was kind to all of us in the early years of our lives. However, my sisters never accepted me. They viewed me as an outsider who did not belong in the family. Actually, the oldest, Alicia, poisoned the other 2, Maria and Juliet, against me by falsely claiming that her parents would treat me better since I was a guy. In fact, all 3 of them objected to me obtaining a room on the same floor as them, and my parents gave in. I had to sleep in a separate room in the basement. This, however, resulted in them simply making fun of me, calling me names like cellar rat and many other things. I simply shrugged it off. Assume that's how siblings treat one another. But I discovered that having my sleeping place in the basement had an impact on how my parents regarded me. Sleeping down there made me feel like I was invisible to them. They lost interest in me, making me less relevant and important. On the other side, they began to focus more on my sisters. When I was 13, they lost all interest in me. It felt like I was a homeless person living in the basement. They missed all of my appointments. They did not care about my academics. They never called me to eat. Sometimes I'd arrive upstairs and saw how they'd already removed the plates. If I was lucky, there were leftovers to eat. Do you believe I received any presents for my birthday? No, since they had no idea when my birthday was. And last Christmas, they stated they neglected to buy me anything, but they will go shopping with me in the coming weeks to purchase me something. Which, as one might assume, never occurred. I don't detest my sisters. I'm delighted they have a place where they may feel cared for and cherished. I simply don't see why they would adopt me if they were going to toss me away like a piece of paper. I believe they simply wanted to experience the feeling of having a son for a while. But they soon understood they could never love me like one of their own. And dumping me in the basement was the final straw. That's when they entirely erased me from their memories. And I just can't do it anymore. I decided to gather my belongings and depart. I'll do it tonight. I'll stay at a friend's house for a bit and seek for a job that will hopefully pay me enough to rent an apartment. After that, I'll never look back. I decided to leave a letter in my room. I wouldn't be shocked if they never found it, let alone realized I was gone. I used a throwaway account for this, and I'm not sure why. I thought I didn't want them to see this, but after thinking about it, I could email them this post. I quote not even sure why I wrote anything here in the first place. I'm really desperate. Maybe I want this because I'm hoping someone will be interested in me and my tale. And now, some advice before you read the update. According to Anonymous Forever, make sure to include your birth certificate and social security card. You will need these. Also, if you graduated from high school, bring your diploma. Get a post office box for mail so that you may get all of your paper mail in one location and not worry about missing it. This individual also says, also check if the P.O. boxes can be used as street addresses in the United States. It, quote, S common, although I'm not sure about your locality. Gunga Danish Gallagher explains. I agree with everything. People are writing here. You may go online and for a couple of dollars have all mail in your name forwarded to your new address. And, as others have suggested, gather all of your identity-related documents. I wish you the best and hope you return here to witness the help that many others have provided. Please keep us updated since, unlike your existing family, we care. I have an adopted relative who I have always cherished and loved as if he were my own brother. No child should ever have to go through what you have in terms of being alone. There are so many professions available right now that allow you to develop a career and become self-sufficient. I consider firms who also pay for college ups to be a big center in my city, and they will provide a respectable income while also covering higher education tuition. Maintain concentration and drive. Then you can accomplish anything. I wish you good luck out there. Learn and improve from all of your experiences, both past and future. Do not let hatred flood your thinking. Instead, attempt to imagine how you would live a life that is different from what you were taught. Okay, I've had enough of my father talking. Seriously, man, take care of yourself and remain safe. Family is what and who you create it with. Please respond to let us know you're okay again. We are now interested in receiving updates. Update 1. I didn't plan to give you an update so fast, but so much has transpired between my post yesterday and this one right now that I feel compelled to do it now. Let's start with what happened yesterday. First and foremost, I never anticipated my post to get that viral. This is completely ridiculous. I attempted to read and respond to all of your comments and direct messages, but there were simply too many. So I apologize if I disregarded you. Many of you provided excellent advice, such as taking all of my paperwork with me and going to the police, which I intended to do today. Let us go through everything that happened chronologically. After reading over several comments, I decided to carry my paperwork with me. So that evening, when my adoptive parents went to bed, I sneaked into their bedroom, stole all of the paperwork I could locate, and waited until nightfall. I gathered my belongings and departed when everyone was asleep. Everything proceeded as expected. I quietly exited the house and headed to my closest friend's home. He had an apartment in a neighboring city, so I had to walk for a long. I arrived to his residence between 2 and 3 a.m. He had a spare bedroom that he utilized for guests who wanted to stay the night. We decided that I could live with him for as long as I wanted. He simply wanted me to find work soon, and if I did, he would ask me to help him pay the rent. I was okay with it. I slept all night and began hunting for work as soon as I woke up. But after a few hours, something more than fascinating occurred. While I was on his laptop, I looked through and collected internet job adverts. The doorbell rang. He opened the door, and I recognized a familiar voice, but it was not one of my parents. It was one of my sisters, Maria to be precise, middle sister. I heard she had inquired whether I was present. He wanted to lie for me, but I decided to ask her what she wanted, so I appeared behind him and she left. Thank God you are here, and hugged me. I was absolutely stunned and startled and had no idea what to say. Then she explained how she discovered me. This is where things become more intriguing. She informed me that this morning, a link to a familiar-sounding tale appeared on her TikTok For You page. Apparently, my tale was published via a TikTok account with a large following, and she got even more dubious of the situation when her and her sister's names were stated to confirm the situation. She proceeded into the basement and into my room, which was mainly unoccupied. Of course, in my letter, I noted in the tale that I would be staying with a buddy. So she walked out to find me, telling her parents she was going to visit a friend. She stated that she drove to 2 different residences before locating the proper location. She evidently visited 2 other friends of mine before locating the proper apartment. She apparently took the letter with her. She stated she hadn't showed them the letter yet and wanted to speak with me first. Except for her, no one knew where I was or what I had done last night. She apologized to me and promised to speak with her parents on my behalf. She said that the way I mentioned her in the first piece made her feel guilty. She said she never disliked me or anything. She revealed that she, too, objected to my having a room on their level, but only because of Alicia's effect on her and because she believed her falsehoods when she was younger. Unlike Alicia and Juliet, she never called me a foul name. She stated that Juliet is most likely intolerable as a result of Alicia's manipulation. She claimed that she had no idea how badly I was treated. She never thought twice about me since Alicia propagated tales that I was simply incredibly socially uncomfortable and didn't like any of them, and that I should just isolate myself down the basement like the worst introvert ever. And as an explanation for her assertions, she just reminded them that I was adopted. And that is why I would want to position myself as an outsider. I told her that although this may explain why she and Juliet were like that to me, it does not explain why my parents would have acted that way. She said that she too may make claims here without providing proof, but she believes this is because, as the firstborn, Alicia is the golden kid. Her and Juliet represent just their futile attempts. Having a son and being the golden child made it simpler for her to trick them both into believing the falsehoods she told them. She then stated that she is aware that the mother and father are easily manipulated if one knows how. And then she offered me 4 choices. 1, I could accompany her right now and speak with my folks. 2, she would let me think about it and then go without telling my parents. 3, I refused to go back with her since she would tell them about the letter but not tell them where to locate me. 4, I refused to get back with her completely, but she would pretend not to know anything and perhaps keep in touch with me. I chose option 2, and she gave me her phone number. She stated that if I chose to give them a chance, she would back me, but she would understand if I declined. And now we're here. I do not know what to do. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't inclined to give them another shot. However, if it is true that Alicia is behind all of this, I'm not sure I want to deal with her again. Update 2. I began by noting that many of your comments suggested that Maria may have deceived me and that I should not trust her right now, which I understand. I opted to stay with my buddy, especially because I applied for so many jobs yesterday and believe I would be able to get one quickly. So, as an 18-year-old, I have no need to contact them again. However, they are only incidental facts. I would not have sent you an update if nothing had happened. Apparently, my adoptive parents were aware that I had lately disappeared and began searching for me. They are confident that Maria knew where I was since she had my letter with her. I am only now in communication with Maria, who told me everything, apparently. My parents tried to question her about my whereabouts and grounded her when she refused to answer. Yes, they grounded a 21-year-old. I couldn't believe it either. As several of you recommended, I went to the police to prevent them from filing a missing report on me. Meanwhile, Alicia started spreading rumors again. Apparently, she used my disappearance as confirmation that she was correct. With everything. Juliet believes every word. She is totally under Alicia's influence. Even though I didn't want to see them again, I do want to give Maria a chance. I asked my buddy whether Maria might perhaps stay with us. He arched an eyebrow and replied, "Only if she wants to sleep on the couch." He then asked me why I wanted her here in the first place. The point is, even if she cares about me, I do not want her to stay with this family. He was upset, but said yes. I emailed her and asked if she was considering moving out, and I offered her a place to stay with me and a buddy. Before you say it, I understand that it appears to be a rapid decision, but I honestly believe that Maria is not like the others. Many of you said that she was probably trying to preserve face, but no one would go through all of that to find me and then protect me by keeping my whereabouts a secret. If they just wanted to save face, given that I never stated their last names or where they reside. So no one could have realized it was her in real life. I sincerely believe that my narrative opened her eyes. She responded by questioning whether I was for genuine and that she wasn't sure. I informed her that she was 21 and should probably consider moving out of her parents' place anyhow, and that she was grounded for her age. It's pretty messed up. They treat their children as if they were 10 years old, despite the fact that they are adults. She stated that she is not denying that she would appreciate it because Alicia appears to have begun spreading lies about her as well, based on how she treats me. She overheard her companions discussing her and referring to her as a maniac's accomplice. I'm still not sure why Alicia dislikes me so much, but it doesn't bother me. She stated that she does not believe it is a horrible idea, but she wants to obtain a job first to ensure financial security before moving away. That was fair enough. My friend was also pleased with this outcome. He stated he isn't looking forward to having another jobless person live with him, but if she has a job, he will gladly assist her. Another reason I believe Maria moving out is not a horrible idea is that if both she and I had jobs, we could probably get an apartment together quickly and have no financial concerns. So that's everything for now. Let's see what occurs in the future. I'd want to mention one more thing. Regarding my last post. Some individuals were making negative comments on the TikTok account that published my tale. Please do not talk negatively about the account. They had no idea it would end that way, and I have no objection to anyone sharing my tale. Thank you for reading. Edit. Some of you brought up the matter with my acquaintance. Believe me, if I weren't certain he was all right with it, I would not have offered it. He was dubious about the offer at first, since I had not asked her before asking him, so he assumed I was just another jobless person, but as I previously stated, he is good with it as long as she has a job. And I am appreciative for what he is doing and will reciprocate his compassion. Don't worry about it. His actions should not be taken for granted. And I know you're correct that inviting her to reside in his place will be a bit much, but as I already stated, he is an incredible person. I wouldn't do it if I thought he wasn't completely comfortable with it. Update 3. I'd want to keep you updated. So, here I am again. I received a call from Alicia today, and it appears that nothing is as it seems. I'm still trying to absorb this call. I'd been in contact with Maria for a few days, and I really believed she was different, but she was exactly like the others. When I received the call today, it was from an unknown number. I froze when I heard Alicia's voice. She shouted at me for saying that. Who the heck am I to talk about her that way? We had a brief dispute, but eventually settled down. I considered hanging up, but I wondered what she expected from me. She advised me to grow up. According to her, I was never a member of their family and should have understood it from the beginning. And quit crying about it now when I could have taken action earlier. I confess I was angry and rude. I urged her to go fuck herself, and I promised to get Maria out of there as well, since neither of us deserved to live with someone like her. Then she said something that she probably shouldn't have uttered. She called it ludicrous since Maria was a part of all this drama. And if I honestly believed Mom and Dad cared about me, she accused me of attempting to ruin her family and told me what occurred after I left. They attempted to save their face. Maria has not told me the entire story. Apparently, she was the one who discovered my tale on TikTok by mistake. She also discovered the letter first in Maria's account of the story. She lied to her parents, telling them she was going to see a friend while looking for me, and they had no idea. But Alicia claims Maria alerted Mom and Dad right away after finding my letter. This also solves the question of how Maria learned of my friend's address. I never informed anyone about this except my adoptive mother. They reasoned that if they tricked me into believing I had someone on my side, it would be simpler for them to reach me since they felt I would not open the door for them. I couldn't believe it and questioned why I should believe someone like her, to which she said, "Who do you think gave me your number?" Then she ordered that I take down my message and hung up. Honestly, I trust her, but it also demonstrates that they are all the same. They attempt to persuade me into reconciling with them in order to salvage their reputation. Many of you warned me about this, but even after everything had happened, I couldn't believe someone could be that nasty. That is it. Will I have any touch with them? I'm not taking down my post. Everyone deserves to understand who these folks are. I can't believe I worked so hard to see the good in them. Oh, and some of you might want to know that I apologize to my buddy for giving room that was not mine to begin with. I understand your critique, and you are correct. I crossed the line there. That being stated, the chapter adopting dickhead family should be closed now. I try to concentrate on my life, and maybe one day I'll meet someone who actually loves me. I'll keep you updated if anything happens, but I believe this is the last post from this throwaway account. Wish me luck. See you. Last update following the last update post, which I intended to be the final update post. Several individuals in the comments accused me of fabricating my tale. They attempted to find discrepancies in my tale to indicate I was lying, accusing me of fake for clout and Reddit karma. Even though I have no idea what Reddit karma is, my response to their attempts at slander is downvoted. I am not lying about anything. I wish them all the best, but I do not want anything to do with this family. A couple individuals pointed out that Juliet and Alicia had their own entries, but they appear to have been removed, since I can't find them. I may also suppose that these are phony profiles, not the actual ones. You can post them beneath this thread if you can find them. But regardless of what they wrote, I'm sure if they're genuine, they're attempting to salvage their name by talking lies. I would want to ask you not to believe whatever they say. However, the criticism to my recent piece, as well as the accusations of lying, is aggravating. And right now, I need some quiet time to reflect on my life and the things that make me happy. I hope you understand. I'll maintain my account here for 2 days and then remove it. This way, I can go on, and no one in the bad comments can accuse me of withholding anything or doing it for clout or credit karma. And everyone should be allowed to read my narrative before it's erased. To all that support me, thank you very much. When I initially posted, I felt secure enough to share my experience and even update you, but I had no idea it would reach so many people. So thank you all very much. Okay, I just saw Juliet's post on the same TikTok page where I submitted my tale, and it's entirely phony. My name was not recommended in this post. It's more like a fan fiction of my narrative in which someone unrelated to her family attempted to add their perspective, and the incidents mentioned never occurred. It's not even like they happen. It's simply a different perspective. No, that is totally made up. That's it for today. Story 2. I, a 43-year-old man, just became embroiled in a terrible family drama that has caused me to doubt the basic foundation of trust and loyalty in my family. My father, whom I had considered a mentor and business partner for more than a decade, revealed a bombshell that rocked my life. To add some perspective, my father, a 65-year-old guy, is a heavy diesel technician who has maintained a small workshop his whole life. I've been interested in his profession since I was a child and would often assist him out on weekends. I went to college to earn my credentials in vehicle engineering so that I could get a degree and formally assist my father when I was 23. My father was a mechanic, and I worked alongside him. I notice and have gradually taken over his workshop. When I started, he only had 2 mechanics working for him part-time and 1 vehicle. With my skills and experience, I implemented various new tactics, and we grew to over 35 staff and 15 vehicles in the previous 10 years. We increased our revenue from $250,000 to just shy of $7 million this fiscal year. My father solely works in the workshop, but I work for 2080 Workshop, which has 2 offices. I have spent the last 10 years of my life creating the family business from the ground up. The blood, sweat, and tears I put into it were not for personal gain, but with the expectation that one day I would reap the benefits of my efforts. The business became my baby, and I faced the obstacles, weathered the storms, and enjoyed the wins with steadfast determination. My older brother, Jerry, 39, is a man who attended university and subsequently worked as an accountant in the city. He has never been interested in my father's business. Growing up, he despised the notion that our father was a mechanic. He used to be ashamed and refused to admit it in front of our friends. When I used to help my father, my brother would yell at me, telling me that this job was beneath us. Even after I revealed my interest in autos and decided to pursue the degree, my brother discouraged me multiple times, telling me that this degree would go nowhere and that I should find a better profession. Despite his humiliation, my father always regarded my brother as his golden kid. You see, it wasn't always this way. My father used to be equally caring towards both of us. But when Jerry was 15 years old, he contracted pneumonia and was buried. The doctors were quite concerned about his condition and warned us that he may be perilously close to death. This was a really difficult moment for our whole family. I recall being terrified of losing my brother throughout his hospital stay. Jerry always prioritized our father over everybody else. He used to beg for our father all the time. My father spent endless nights in the hospital, so they connected a lot. Jerry eventually recovered, and everything returned to normal. However, my father continued to favor Jerry throughout the years. Even when Jerry grew up to despise our father's career, Dad didn't mind and preferred him anyhow. As I grew older, I became aware of our father's preference for Jerry and was appropriately saddened by it. For example, once my school had an award ceremony in which I was to be honored with an award, I was overjoyed that I had received the prize and informed my parents. My mother hugged me, and my father smiled warmly, praising me. I told my parents that the school had asked parents to attend our award celebration. I knew my mother might be unable to attend because she worked long night hours at the hospital, leaving her exhausted during the day. So I glanced at my father with curiosity, expecting him to say he would be there. My father looked at me warily, then glanced at my mother, who asked him if he could be present for me at the prize ceremony. My father then cleared his throat, revealing that he had planned to play basketball with Jerry. My mother stared at him angrily and told him that playing basketball with Jerry wasn't important and that he should accompany Jerry to my award ceremony instead. My father nodded unwillingly in agreement. My mother urged my father at supper the night before the event to attend my award ceremony. Jerry, who was sitting at the dinner table, asked my father if he was canceling on him for the basketball session. My father emphasized to him that they could always play basketball. The next week, Jerry instantly expressed his dissatisfaction, claiming that he was looking forward to enjoying father-son time and did not want to waste his time at my ceremony. My mother reacted to him that as my older brother, he should be more tolerant and supportive because I had received an award. She went on to suggest that my father needed to be with me on the day of the event. I reminded my father again before leaving for school to make sure he showed up. He assured me not to worry about it, and that he will be there at my awards ceremony. I looked around for my father everywhere, but I couldn't locate him. My name was ultimately called, and I had to step up to the platform to get my prize. I recall collecting my medal from the principal while my classmates celebrated, and I was seeking for my father's face in the throng. He never showed up. I texted my mother that my father never came up. She quickly contacted me, alarmed, asking if I was certain that my father had not arrived, and I explained that he was nowhere to be found, and maybe he forgot. My mother informed me it was impossible since she had set 5 alerts on his phone and couldn't see his car parked in front of our house, indicating he was certainly gone. At this time, we were startled and anxious. I wondered whether anything had happened to him. When I got home from school, I opened the door to find my mother and father having a heated dispute. They were yelling at each other at maximum volume. The air was filled with tension, and my parents' angry fight echoed down the hall. My mother, her face distorted with rage, stood at the door while my father, appearing both guilty and defensive, attempted to excuse his behavior. I gingerly entered our living room filled with bewilderment and dread. I asked my father whether he was okay. My concern was apparent as I said that he never showed up to my school for the award presentation. The room was silent for a time as my father tried to avoid eye contact and whispered an apology. Something about losing track of time and unexpected events. I could tell that his story didn't make up. But before I could press any further, my mother let out a flood of fury and despair. "Why did you show up, John?" she demanded, her tone fierce and accusing. "Tell the truth. Our son earned an award and you promised to be there. What's more important than that?" Dad shuffled uneasily, clearly aware that he was on the hot seat before you could answer. Jerry entered the room casually, enjoying ice cream. My mother focused her wrath on Jerry, her eyes narrowing in shock and rage. "What is your part in all of this, Jerry? Where were you and your father? And why didn't you celebrate your brother's big day?" Jerry shrugged indifferently, muttering something about how he had suddenly needed ice cream and had requested our father to drive him there first. Later, comma. When they arrived to my school, they were told they had missed the award ceremony, so they returned home. My mother's expression changed from rage to astonishment as she absorbed this ridiculous justification. "You skipped your brother's award ceremony for ice cream," she shouted, her voice rising in surprise. "You and your father missed his big moment because you wanted ice cream among the rising stress." Instead of apologizing and recognizing his error, my father attempted to explain and excuse Jerry's conduct, stammering out an explanation that simply added gasoline to the flames. "Look, this isn't a huge thing." He started trying to diminish the significance of my award ceremony. "It is simply an awkward ceremony, and there will be more in the future." Jerry requested an ice cream, and I assumed we could just grab one quickly. I didn't think it was a huge problem. His comments hit me like a blow in the stomach. I couldn't believe what I heard. My own father, who I had anticipated to be present to participate in my excitement, was downplaying the significance of my accomplishment with a dismissive tone and a casual dismissal of a moment I had been looking forward to. He left me stunned as his words floated in the air. My first disbelief transformed into a powerful combination of irritation and despair. A knot developed in my throat, and I felt the sting of unshed tears. My triumph, the reward for my hard work and effort, was being dismissed as insignificant. But at that point, I knew it wasn't just about missing the ceremony. It was about a lack of understanding, an absence of support, and the terrible realization that people closest to me did not recognize my successes. I looked at my father, who was meant to be a source of support, with incredulity and betrayal. My eyes mirrored the deep disappointment I felt in my heart. My mother continued to express her disappointment, chastising them both for putting an unexpected ice cream craving ahead of a significant milestone in my life. Their argument raged on. I continued to feel betrayed and hurt, with a heavy weight on my chest and a lump in my throat. I mustered a weak smile and told my father, "Don't worry about it." The words tasted better on my tongue, forced out to conceal the deeper emotions that swirled within me. I didn't want to escalate the argument or exacerbate the already tense situation. As I returned to my room, the facade I had constructed for my father crumbled. The door closed behind me, blocking out the outside world, and I let the floodgates open. Tears streamed down my cheeks, which I had held back in front of my parents. The weight of disappointment, hurt, and a deep sense of being let down overwhelmed me. My mother came into my room to comfort me when she saw how upset I was. She sat next to me, putting her arm around my shoulder. She didn't speak much, just let me cry and express my feelings. Her presence was reassuring, and I felt a bit better knowing she was there for me. After a while, she spoke gently. "I know it hurts, sweetheart. Your dad messed up, and I'm sorry you had to go through this. Sometimes people make mistakes, but it doesn't take away from your achievement. You work hard for that award, and nothing can change that." Her words were like a warm hug for my soul, and I began to feel a little lighter. She stayed with me until I calmed down, assuring me that despite the disappointment, I was still valued, that I loved. There are so many instances where my dad has shown clear favoritism towards my brother over me. My mother has had several conversations with him regarding this. My dad always listens and makes an effort to be more involved with me, but it never lasts long. And he ultimately goes back to being super dad to Jerry. It's like a pattern that I've noticed throughout my life. Despite these moments of partiality, I have always tried hard to win my dad's approval. I have a genuine interest in his work and, in particular, developed a deep love for cars, partly because it seemed like something he valued, even though it often felt like a one-sided effort. I was thinking that my efforts will finally make a difference and win me the attention and praise I seek for my dad. Last year, my dad filed for divorce with my mother, citing irreconcilable differences, marking the beginning of a challenging chapter in our family's life. I knew for a few years that the arguments between my mother and my dad had become worse and worse, but I'd never imagined that they would be divorcing. It was a challenging period for us as a family. My dad has now gone on to date other young ladies. 5 months ago, my dad summoned me and my brother for an important meal. We sat down at the dinner table, and my brother Jerry and I, as our dad, prepared to dump some unwelcome news on us. The mood in the room was tight, and I couldn't help but feel a knot in my stomach awaiting what was coming next. With a serious look, my dad finally talked. "I have something crucial to share with you both. Gina and I got married." He stared at us as if expecting us to be delighted or at least tolerant of his decision. Jerry and I exchanged shocked stares. Gina, his current girlfriend, was just 30 years old, just a few years younger than myself. The astonishment on our faces must have been clear, but my dad proceeded, completely oblivious to our surprise. He went on to tell how he had discovered love again, and how Gina brought joy and excitement into his life. I couldn't believe that my dad had decided to get married without even inviting us to his wedding or discussing it with us. My dad didn't just stop with that statement and went on to emphasize how proud he was of the business he had formed and evolved over time. He mentioned that he had been thinking about his business's succession strategy recently. I waited with bated breath for him to reveal his plans. My father turned to face me and informed me that he had battled long and hard about this, and that because I hadn't married and had no children of my own, I shouldn't expect to inherit the family company from him. I glanced at him, perplexed, as he explained that he had decided to give over the whole business to my brother. Shock and astonishment poured over me as I dealt with the weight of this unanticipated betrayal. It was a sucker hit to the belly, and my confidence in my father began to erode. Fury and treachery welled up within me as my father unloaded this bombshell. My entire universe, built on a decade of hard work and commitment, was disintegrating in front of my eyes. I gazed at him, my jaw tightening, unable to grasp the gravity of his decision. Why did I eventually manage to say the word saving with a mixture of fury and hurt? I've committed my life to this industry. I built it with you. How do you just pass it over to Jerry? Dad, appearing unaffected by the uproar he had created, stated his rationale. Jerry has a family, including his wife and children. He needs financial stability, and I believe he can take the company to new heights. His words hung in the air, and I felt the weight of his preference fall on me yet again. I battled to retain my cool. My palms curled into fists, indicating that this was not fair. I've devoted everything to this company. I've worked with you and given my time and efforts, and now you're just going to dismiss me because Jerry has a family. How about my future, my dreams? His answer was cruel. You can continue to work for Jerry, but the business will go to your brother. That is my ultimate choice. Anger flashed through me, but I held back my response. I turned to Jerry looking for some assistance, but instead received a sliver of empathy. He remained silent and avoided my sight. The disappointment I felt went beyond my father. It now included my brother, who opted not to support me. At that point, I felt the weight of a lifetime of partiality bearing down on me. It wasn't only about business. It was the culmination of many years of feeling second best. The sacrifice I made and the commitment I shown were all rejected with a careless wave, resigned. I murmured, "Fine, Dad, if that's what you want." I turned away from the terrible taste of betrayal that lingered in the air. I chose to leave his place rather than continue arguing with him. I couldn't shake the sensation of desertion, the awareness that my father still preferred his golden kid despite how hard I had worked for him. Later, in the isolation of my house, the unfairness weighed heavily on me. I believed the business to be my legacy. My life's effort was slipping between my fingertips. Anguish welled up, and the room became blurry as tears obscured my eyesight. I quote, never felt so alone or dismissed. I decided to phone my mother, believing she could understand what I was going through. I informed her about everything that happened, even how my father preferred my brother, how he took away my business, and how bereft I felt. She was astonished and outraged when I told her the specifics. "I never imagined he'd do anything like this," my mother remarked gently, looking unhappy. "Treating your brother so much better and giving him the whole business instead of sharing it evenly between the two of you is utterly unjust." Her statements summed up precisely how I felt. I didn't mind sharing the business with my brother, but my father had unfairly given it to him entirely. Despite how hard I had worked over the years, we continued to chat. My mother's voice changed from surprised to resolute. She forcefully advised me not to see this as the end, but as an opportunity for something new. You quote, "V accomplished incredible things, and you don't need his approval. Why not start your own business? You know, many clients would prefer work with you than your brother." With her words, a spark of resolve lit within me. If my father argued, he might take away all I'd worked for. He was mistaken. The sorrow of betrayal inspired a quiet promise. I quote, "to make my own route and create something new, from the ashes of what had been taken from me." Over the previous 10 years, I have accumulated more than enough money to establish my own business. The next day, as the truth of the situation became clear, I took immediate action. I contacted more than half of the clients we had acquired over the years, focusing mostly on those I had recruited. These were the clients I had developed connections with and gained their confidence. I informed them about my father's plan to leave the entire firm to my elder brother, which prompted me to start my own company. The clients were as surprised as I was, but unexpectedly, the general response was really favorable. These were folks who had grown to appreciate my devotion, work ethic, and the principles I brought to the table. They informed me that they were willing to follow me and continue our great collaboration under a new flag. The word of my departure from the family firm circulated throughout the industry, and some of my father's employees approached me to express their willingness to work with me. It was as if everyone were realizing that once my father placed the firm in the hands of my brother, it was certain to fail. When I handed in my resignation letter to my father, he was astonished. He told me that I shouldn't leave the firm at such a critical time. But I sneered at his statement and departed when the majority of the customer base switched sides. The formerly prosperous family company began to fail. Dad, caught in the crossfire of the aftermath, watched helplessly as his magnificent plan failed catastrophically. My new venture has grown over the last few months. The backing of loyal clientele, along with my experience, enables me to not only survive, but grow. My father's treachery motivated me to rise from the ashes, stronger and more resilient. My determination is reflected in the business I've developed, which is now self-sustaining and growing. I can now have the last laugh, knowing that my hard work, devotion, and persistence paid out despite all odds. Meanwhile, I learnt from my mother that Jerry has no clue how to run a firm and is battling to keep the remaining customers. I believe word of my success got to my father, since he wrote me a long mail yesterday calling me an idiot for not assisting my brother and keeping the family company alive, as well as how I had abandoned family. He wrote about how he was having financial problems and that his new wife had threatened to divorce him because he could no longer afford her lifestyle. He concluded the message by stating that he wanted me to do the right thing by returning to the family business and bringing back all of my clients so that I could keep our family business afloat. Update 1. Thank you for everyone's excellent advice and encouragement about my circumstance. To explain a few points. I'm not sure why my father believed it was a good idea for my brother to take over the firm when we all knew he had no clue about the family business. Jerry agreed to my father's requests since he knew how well our firm was doing and felt this would be a simple job with me carrying most of the burden. He had previously communicated to us that he was dissatisfied with his work. As a result, I'm thinking he expected me to perform the majority of the work while he and his family benefited from the CEO title. For those asking why I haven't married yet, it's simply because I've always been a bit of a loner, focused on my profession. While I've had a girlfriend for the past year and a half whom I adore, and we've talked marriage as a future goal, we both feel that we need to mature as individuals before moving further. Regardless of my marital status, I never anticipated my father to give me the entire firm. In fact, if I didn't have any children in the future, I would have been content with a 70-50th split or even a 50-50th split between myself and my brother. My portion of the firm would have eventually passed to my brother's children. Anyway, there was no need for my father to be so harsh and leave the entire business to my brother. I've been in this industry for 10 years, and I deserve a portion of it. I never coerced any of my clients to pick me over my father's business. They choose to work with me because I was always willing to go above and beyond to ensure their pleasure and the development of long-term connections. I never wanted my brother to fail, or our family's company to be ruined. The business collapsed because my brother didn't understand the ins and outs of it, and my father was too preoccupied with his new wife to focus on his clients. My father may have believed that I would finally give up on my business and return to him, pleading for his forgiveness when I failed. But because to my hard effort, I am not only standing solid, but also prospering. It's upsetting to see a business I helped establish fail, but it's the result of their own decisions, not mine. I plan to discuss this with my father next week when I have some free time. Update 2. I finally spoke with my father. He invited me over to supper last weekend, anticipating an apology. I went to his apartment. I answered his call and was surprised to see my brother Jerry waiting for me. The mood was tight, but I hoped they had summoned me here for a solution. My father took a deep breath and exchanged glances with Jerry before unleashing the bombshell. He began by expressing his sadness over what had transpired between us and his grief that our family company was now in pieces. I raised an eyebrow, ready myself for what was going to happen, anticipating him to declare he had changed his mind. Instead, my father began encouraging me to return to the family company as quickly as possible, suggesting that he would forgive and forget if I did so. Jerry jumped in, blaming me for the company's problems and accusing me of being selfish for leaving him to operate the company alone. I couldn't believe what I heard. "Dad, you gave over the whole business to Jerry without thinking about my future. How could this be my fault?" I replied. "Frustration is rising within me," Jerry sneered. "You took the majority of the clientele with you when you departed. That is the problem. They followed me due to the relationships I established, not because I forced them. You were invited to try and get them back. If you were that good at maintaining customers, your surviving customers would not have abandoned the firm either," I argued, aware of the gravity of their charges. My father sighed. "Look, I do not want to see the family company fail. It is my primary source of income and allows me to maintain my current lifestyle. Gina has also left me because of all of this. I'd rather enjoy my retirement in peace than try to resolve this continuing family issue. So quit being selfish and come back to work for your brother." The space felt smaller and the air was heavier. I recognized this isn't the apology or resolution I was looking for. It was an attempt to push me back into the position from which I had worked so hard to leave. Stunned and hurt, I rose up and stared at my father, angry. "I am done with this conversation." I walked out from the poisonous debate, declaring that I would gladly see your business fail. Since our talk, I've received several messages and phone calls from Jerry and his father. They're calling me names and blaming me for everything. It's extremely devastating to watch how my own family wants to take advantage of my hard work, so I've blocked them for now. Update 3. Hey there! It's been 6 months since I last updated you on my life, and I have some fairly exciting news to share. To begin with, my firm is not just surviving, but prospering. It's been a crazy trip, but watching my hard work pay off has been really fulfilling. Plus, there's something even more fantastic on the way. I hope to propose to my girlfriend shortly. She's very stunning, and I know she's the one for me. I can't wait to pop the question and hopefully begin our road to a happy and successful marriage together. On a more serious note, things have not been going well for my father. My brother is unlucky. He ran his father's firm into the ground. What was once a profitable firm had to be sold to another since it could no longer maintain itself. The whole scenario was difficult for my father, especially because he didn't come out with anything to show for his years of hard labor. To make matters worse, following his divorce, his new wife claimed a sizable portion of what little he had left from the sale. It was a disaster, and it's been difficult to watch him go through it all because of the drama. I've decided to keep my distance from both my father and brother. I still hear about what's going on with them via family friends. These buddies are wonderful. They keep me updated without dragging me back into the familial drama. Here's something you may not anticipate. Despite the tumult, my connection with my mother has become stronger. She has been really supportive and accepting of the decisions I've had to make. Despite all that has transpired, Mom treats me and my brother equally, and she has been a great source of support as I manage my new career. She also mentioned that my brother is contemplating about returning to his origins in accountancy, now that his entrepreneurial venture has failed. Despite the difficulties with my father and brother, I am so glad for the happiness and security in my life right now. My partner has been my rock through it all, and her support means the world to me. Also, knowing that my mother understands and supports my decisions has been a big comfort. It's not always easy to feel balanced when there's so much going on, but I'm focusing on the positives and what I can manage. I am more driven than ever to succeed in my business ventures. Faced with these familial issues, I have grown stronger and more resilient. I am determined to transform every challenge into an opportunity for growth and accomplishment. Looking ahead, I'm excited about the future and prepared to face whatever challenges come my way with a good attitude and a firm focus on my goals. Here's to going ahead, staying optimistic and taking advantage of every chance. Story 3. I discovered that my family is concealing my fiancé's affair with my best friend. So I'm flipping the switch and taking revenge. The outcome was pure chaos. It was simply another lazy Sunday afternoon. The kind where the sun lulls you into complacency and the city hum seems a million miles away. I was sprawled on the couch, a half-read book on my chest, mindlessly scrolling through my phone. Tom was in the shower, whistling a tune that had been playing in his head all week. Everything was normal, or so I thought. My phone vibrated with a reminder. I rolled my eyes as I considered the upcoming family dinner on Friday. Those dinners were always a mix of awkward conversations and my mother attempting to show off her latest Pinterest-inspired recipes. I added a quick reminder to Tom's phone calendar. He wasn't very good at keeping track of these things. I opened his calendar. A message notification popped up at the top of the screen. "Don't worry, she doesn't suspect a thing," it read. My heart stopped. It was from Peach. Confusion hit in first, followed by a chilly dread that poured into my veins. I knew I shouldn't, yet I clicked on the mail. The screen opened to a group chat labeled The Inner Circle, and the most recent messages hit me like a freight train. There they were, a line of texts between Peach, Alex, and a few others, discussing about anything from banal day-to-day stuff to frighteningly intimate information about meetings and sentiments. The type of stuff that you never want to see between your fiancé and your closest buddy. For a time, I sat transfixed, the phone heavy in my hands. This had to be some kind of twisted prank, right? Maybe Tom was arranging a surprise party or something. Anything different than this. I scrolled up, searching for something, anything that might explain the nausea in my stomach. But as I browsed, the reality became clear. There were dates, times, secret rendezvous, and even conversations about how to keep me in the dark. Each communication was a betrayal, and every phrase was a lie. I felt nauseous. The room spun around me as the gravity of the situation struck me. I took a deep breath and tried to control my quivering hands. I wanted proof, something substantial, before confronting them with grim determination. I began collecting screenshots of the whole chat, including every message and heartbreakingly nonchalant allusion to their deception. I saved the screenshots to my own phone and removed the proof of my spying from Tom's. If I was going to face them, I needed the element of surprise, as well as the proof in my possession. I sat back, trying to digest everything. How long has it been going on? Had everyone known but me? The concept made me feel dumb and alienated. I reflected on the previous few months, trying to piece together the signs I must have missed. There were late evenings when Tom returned home from work after supper. Peach had started taking weekend trips to clear her mind, and they had both been acting a little too casually around each other. The sound of the shower turning off interrupted my thoughts. Panic set in. Tom would be out soon, expecting to find me exactly where he'd left me. I'm lost in my book, none the wiser, to the crumbling world around me. I couldn't tell him what I discovered, not yet. I needed time to think and plan my next move. I hurriedly wiped the tears from my cheeks, stood up and grabbed my book, opening it to a random page. By the time Tom strolled into the living room, towel drying his hair, I'd managed to train my features to appear regular. "Hey, you okay?" he inquired, stopping to kiss the top of my head. "Yeah, just got lost in this book," I lied, my voice firm despite the agony within. "That's my gal." He grinned, oblivious to the tempest boiling within me. "I'm going to make us some coffee. Want something?" I shook my head as he disappeared into the kitchen, leaving me alone. I felt the weight of what I learned bore down on me. Betrayal from the person I loved and trusted the most, as well as my closest friend. No, it's my ex-best buddy. The anguish was raw, a new wound that I knew would not heal quickly. But behind the anguish, rage was boiling, a ferocious, righteous indignation that demanded action. They believed they could play me for a fool, hide their deception behind my back. No, I would not let this slip. They had underestimated me and would later regret it. Tom hummed in the kitchen. The parts of my strategy started to fall into place. What about the rehearsal dinner? Yes, that would be the ideal time and location. A gathering of all our friends and relatives. They had also lied to other persons. It would be public, embarrassing, and completely awful. I was unsure whether that was the correct thing to do. This is the moral thing to do. But at the time, I didn't care. They had brought this upon themselves. I would reveal the truth, allowing them to suffer a portion of the misery they had given me. The remainder of the day was a blur. I was present, but not really. My thoughts were elsewhere, plotting and planning to ensure that when the time came, I would be prepared. And after it was finished, and the truth was out, maybe I could begin to gather up the pieces of my broken heart. But in the meanwhile, I'd keep my rage within. It was the only thing that held me together. The following 3 days were a master lesson in acting normal. Every morning I put on a grin for Tom, talked about trivial matters and smiled at his jokes, all while my mind was reliving the messages I'd seen. The nights were the most difficult. Lying next to him, trying to sleep as my thoughts raced, was a form of pain I had not anticipated. Every morning, once Tom went for work, my real day began. I turned our place upside down, seeking for any physical evidence, old receipts, random notes that may lend credibility to the screenshots. It didn't seem right, invasive, but the desire for absolute clarity propelled me. I discovered a few invoices for dinners billed for two while I was either working late or visiting my sister in another city. Each revelation was simultaneously a modest success and a greater pain. Armed with this fresh evidence, I sat down to arrange everything. I copied the receipts and noted the dates and times, comparing them to text messages and call records I had obtained from Tom's phone while he was sleeping. I was preparing a case as if it were a trial with our relatives and friends as the jury. A knock on the door interrupted my sorting process. It was Lisa. I didn't know how much I needed a friend until I saw her standing there, concern etched on her face. "Hey, you have been Mia for days. Is everything okay?" she inquired, walking inside. I paused before deciding it was time to let someone else know. I brought her to my temporary command center, which consisted of documents sprawled around the living room floor. Her eyes widened as she witnessed the mayhem. "What exactly is going on here?" Lisa inquired, her tone a mixture of surprise and anxiety. "It's Tom and Peach," I spoke, the words tasting unpleasant. I handed her a stack of screenshot printouts. "They have been having an affair." Lisa's gaze raced between the texts. Her brow furrowed further with each one. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry," she said. Her voice was rich with empathy. She sat down next to me, her presence reassuring. "I won't just let them get away with it," I said, my voice strong, more to persuade myself than her. "What are your plans?" "The rehearsal dinner. I'm going to expose everyone what they have been doing behind my back." Lisa nodded slowly. "Okay. How can I help?" Her willingness to support me was a lifeline in the midst of my emotional turmoil. "Please help me ensure that I have everything correct. I don't want there to be any question when I put everything out. We spent hours poring over the evidence sequence, pictures, and receipts, ensuring that each piece of the jigsaw was correctly put. Lisa recommended we make a digital slideshow that could be viewed on a screen. Irrefutable and stark. "Let us make it impossible for them to lie their way out of this," she continued, her voice firm. I felt grateful and guilty for bringing her into this mess, but she was correct. We needed to establish a solid case. We worked all night, propelled by coffee and a common feeling of purpose. By morning, we had a chronology that began with the first flirtatious communication and finished with the most recent encounter. It was devastating. A story of deception so blatant and straightforward that no one could dispute it. The next stage was to make sure that the dinner's technological parts ran well. I contacted the venue under the premise of discussing the dinner menu and casually confirmed the audio-visual setup. "Oh, and can we test the presenting equipment after we've set up?" I inquired in my voice. Light, of course. The event planner said, "You can come in early to get everything ready." Perfect. The day before the dinner, I went to the venue for a test run. I met the AV technician, Derek, a young man who appeared more interested in his phone than his profession. But when I told him what I needed, he brightened up. Perhaps detecting the tension or drama in my voice, we tried the slideshow, a sequence of slides that began innocently enough with photographs of Tom and me before progressing to the texts and concluding with the receipts. Watching everything play out on the big screen was both satisfying and heartbreaking. "Looks excellent," Derek replied, giving me a thumbs up. "It will undoubtedly have an impact." "That's the strategy," I responded. The weight of what I was about to undertake rested heavy on my shoulders. I drove home, dazed. When I returned, the city lights that had blurred past the flat were quiet. Tom is still at work. I took a long, hot shower, hoping to wash away the dread, but it clung to me, a continual reminder of the impending encounter. That night, as I laid in bed next Tom, his breathing steady and unaware, I sensed the weight of what lied ahead. There was no going back now. My hands trembled. My heart felt heavy, but my determination remained unshakable. I was prepared to face the consequences, whatever they may be. After all, I wasn't the one who had lied or cheated. I was the only one bold enough to reveal the truth. My determination grew stronger as the dinner date approached. I was no longer doing this for myself, but for everyone who had been duped and taken advantage of. I phoned the venue again to confirm everything. The manager informed me that all systems were operational. "I hope your event is unforgettable," he remarked cheerfully. "Oh, it will be," I replied with a tight smile on my face. I didn't get much sleep the night before supper. My imagination raced with what-if scenarios. What if someone tipped Tom off? What if the technology fails? I had backups for my backups, but concern was not directed at me. I got out of bed and practiced what I'd say, standing in my home room as if it were a venue. I rehearsed till the words seemed empty. Then I went back to bed. Exhaustion ultimately brought me down. The morning arrived with a feeling of inevitability. I stood up, dressed in something striking but plain nothing, very showy. Today wasn't about celebrating. It was about revelations. I met Lisa for coffee before arriving at the event early. We reviewed the plan one last time. At the venue, I remember every detail. I welcomed the workers with a calmness that I did not experience. I handed over my USB with the slideshow and watched as it was put into their machine. Everything looked nice. The television came to life, displaying the first innocuous image of Tom and me in happier times. It would be the night's last joyful image. As visitors started to come, I played the polite host. My stomach is churning with nerves. Tom came smiling, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Peach was immediately behind him, completely oblivious. They interacted, joked, and hugged family members. I watched them, my heart hardening with each phony gesture they performed. Lisa remained close. Her presence provided a constant reminder of why I was doing this. "You okay?" she muttered as the room filled. "As prepared as I can ever be," I muttered back, wrapping my fingers around the controller in my pocket. It was nearly time. As supper came to an end, I excused myself by stating that I was going to start the slideshow. My hand did not shake as I clicked the button. The first damning message was huge and clear. The room grew silent as phones were turned off and all eyes were pulled to the television. I took a step back, seeing our family's expressions of astonishment, disbelief, and indignation. Tom's face was devoid of color, his gaze fixed on me across the room. Peach looked like she was about to faint. My mother's expression collapsed. Her former arguments were crushed by overwhelming evidence. The room burst in turmoil. In the midst of the hubbub, angry and disbelieving voices were heard. I felt a peculiar tranquility. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. As the truth of what I'd done became clear, I realized this was merely the beginning. But whatever happened next, I'd meet it front on. After all, I had just shattered my former existence. Now it was time to start over. I paused. My reaction was to leave and not watch Tom and Peach squirm. But I couldn't ignore the expression in my mother's eyes. With one last look at Tom, who was currently battling with his own parents, I followed her out the room. The chilly nighttime air provided a stark contrast to the hot environment inside. My mother moved a few feet away and then turned to face me. "I can't believe you do this," she replied, her voice low and full of sorrow. "Do what?" "Expose the truth," I responded, my wrath rising again. "They lied to us, to every one of us. How can you defend that?" She shook her head, her fingers quivering slightly. "It is not that straightforward." She started, but I stopped her off. "It's that simple, Mom. They deceived me. You noticed the text. You knew." Her face wrinkled, and for a little time I watched the weight of everything bore down on her. "I wasn't sure how to change it," she muttered nearly to herself. "I believed it would simply go away." "How could you think like that? How could you allow me continue arranging a wedding with a man who was cheating on me?" Even I could feel the anguish in my voice. "I don't know," she said, her voice cracking. "I believed I was protecting you by lying and withholding things from you." I felt tears well up in my eyes, a combination of wrath and grief. We stood for a long time. The only noises were distant voices from the arena and rustling leaves in the air. Finally, my mother reached out to touch my arm but appeared to think better of it. "I apologize," she whispered softly, hardly audible. "I actually am. I botched up." I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not only my mother but a flawed, terrified human being. It didn't justify what she'd done, but it made it difficult to remain upset. "I'm not sure whether I can forgive this," I informed her honestly. She nodded with tears in her eyes. "I understand. But I am here, whenever you are ready to speak." I did not react. Returning to the venue, the night was far from done and there were still clashes to come. But for the first time, I felt a glimmer of sympathy for my mother. It did not change her previous actions, but it was a start. As I came back inside, the cacophony struck me like a wave of fights. Cries of outrage. The chaos I'd caused was overwhelming yet vital. It was time to face the music, and whatever happened next, I was ready. After all, there was no turning back now. My aunt went crazy. She began calling my mother the horrible, uncaring B word over and over. My mother quickly checked her phone and believed I had texted her the screenshots. She screamed and became enraged, accusing me of once again attempting to ruin her life. I was correct. She still appears to be distraught at being found having an affair and outcast. My grandparents' reaction stung the most because they began shouting at my mother. My grandma was pleading with a handful of our other guests to keep my arm back as she began yelling every obscene word she could. My grandfather was yelling at my mother, "I didn't raise a whore." Everyone is now yelling and weeping in hysteria. My other bridesmaids were cursing at Paige and calling her a whore. I hate to confess it, but I found satisfaction in it. My grandpa went on to shout at Tom, saying things I can't put here since he was so graphic. I simply began laughing and weeping. I experienced so many feelings that I honestly believe my body didn't know what to do. So it accomplished everything. The tears continued pouring. My cousin rushed me outside as quickly as she could with Tom after us. He kept yelling my name and pleading with me to speak up and explain. I ignored him, as my cousin pushed him away from her car so she could get inside and drive away. She escorted me to my aunt's house and instructed me not to open the door for anyone. I felt like a child being left at home alone. All I did was sit on the floor. That's when I simply began crying. All of the feelings I'd been holding in for the last week had finally surfaced. After approximately another hour, my aunt and cousin returned home. They embraced me for around 5 minutes. When we eventually parted ways, I saw my aunt had several scratches on her. I'm thinking they couldn't keep my aunt away from my mother for much longer. My aunt updated me on everything. Apparently, as my cousin drove away with me, Tom returned and began shouting at Peach for destroying everything. They got into a yelling match, and several of our friends attempted to separate them. My grandparents, Aunt and Tony, my mother's husband, were questioning my mother for answers. Tony was the most upset. Apparently, during the family trip I couldn't attend, my mother informed Tony that I had offered my ticket to Peach so she could have a pleasant break for herself. Tony is currently yelling and reading some of her texts aloud. She begged him to stop and said she could explain. My aunt then said that she should start explaining since all she sees is a lousy mother and a terrible person. Apparently, this enraged my mother, who began yelling about how much she despised me, how I wrecked and complicated her life, and how she thought she could never be happy since I was always a continuous reminder of her worst mistake. She regretted not aborting me when she had the opportunity. My mother's hidden romance enraged my aunt, who pounced on her. For reference, my aunt is infertile. She referred to me as the daughter she never had. So in her view, she went full mama bear on my biological mother. That is what I am calling her now. My aunt has been more of a mother to me than my actual mother has been during the last 22 years. To summarize a few of the details, Tony is divorcing my mother. He's suspected for a few months that she's been cheating again. Peach revealed Tom's text to her about sleeping with her since he felt I was becoming distant. I wasn't constantly working extra hours at work to save for his birthday, and he felt lonely and didn't know how to bring it up with me. Peach's father inundated her with calls and will be cutting her off financially. Peach apparently blames me for spoiling her and accuses me of being an evil witch. According to her messages, my mother has gone on a rant with our family, accusing me of being an awful person for wrecking her world yet again. She should have considered it before condoning anything. My half-siblings thought it was not their place to say anything to me, and I should have expected Tom to seek elsewhere. Because humans are not monogamous, and individuals love whomever they choose. Same old, same old. Much more has occurred. But to keep my head from collapsing under the stress and rage, it's now out in the open. I quote, "We've been getting messages and calls from everyone, but I've left my phone in the other room. My aunt promised to let me stay with her until I got out of this tangled mess. I accepted it. Since I have no plan of returning to that flat, I've already notified my landlord and will handle everything next week. My manager contacted me back, saying I could take as much paid time off as I wanted. I will absolutely accept it, since I am really considering moving somewhere quiet and serene. My aunt and cousin are at my house taking some of my belongings, and my cat Tom is there asking them not to take them and to let me simply talk to him. I quote Mom, not sure what he expects from the talk. My emotional and mental wounds will be with me for some time. I also know I have a long path ahead of me in treatment. However, things have rapidly escalated. The next day, I awoke and had a long, hot shower. I switched the phone back on. I couldn't even open it or erase the notice before receiving a call from one of my bridesmaids. I responded, and she immediately began yelling at me about how I could disregard Peach and Tom in their hour of need. At first, I was perplexed. I urged her not to shout at me since I don't care about them anymore, but she went ahead anyway. She yelled that Peach had self-harmed when she sent me the pictures. They were close enough to the surface to show the scar and a small amount of blood. Whether or not it was deep enough, it rocked me. I wanted to sneer on the phone since I knew she was doing it to rally people to her cause, and I hadn't responded to her text yet. She also informed me that after Tom attempted to overdose, his buddies discovered him at my apartment, disoriented. They transported him to the hospital where he was cleared since they did not need to pump. They are keeping him under surveillance for the next 72 hours, which is a good thing. Just because I despise his guts does not imply I wish him dead. After this, my buddy circle has been severely divided since I did not reply to any of them before they did this. I still have no intention of speaking to one of them. I don't care what they do to get attention as long as they leave me alone. During the initial encounter with my egg donor, whom I will now refer to as my biological mother, Tony discovered that my egg donor had lied to him and told Peach that she may take my ticket to accompany them on the vacation. When they arrived home, Tony brought up his concerns about my mother cheating, which fueled their argument. She began yelling at him and admitting everything. She informed him that I have siblings who are not his, among other extremely terrible things. He had to contact the police to take her off his property. Tony contacted me this morning to inform me that he is divorcing her. His attorneys will write his documents within the next week or so. He informed me that my mother admitted that I was the result of a long-term affair she had with his closest friend. My egg donor is a horrible lady, I am coming to learn. However, after learning that Tony is receiving documents, she attempted to backpedal. She quote, been contacting my aunt, imploring her to persuade Tony not to do this, otherwise she'll be homeless. She's tried calling Tony and his family, but they've all ignored her. However, this wasn't enough for my egg donor. She knew my aunt's schedule and attempted to abuse me. My cousin was still with me, so she couldn't come inside. However, witnessing Mom shout at me triggered some of my deep-seated insecurities, and I began to worry. When I heard a big crash, my cousin brought me upstairs. My mother burst through the window, went upstairs, and assaulted me, just once in my life. I lashed back at my egg donor. I finally vented all of my rage onto her. My cousin was fighting to keep us apart, so she had to rush to fetch our neighbor. I just have a few scratches and bite marks, but otherwise I'm okay. I am also filing accusations against my egg donor. Hopefully I can get a restraining order. To be honest, my mother fled before the police arrived, but I provided them Tony's address in case he attempted to return. I realized that those terrible individuals won't stop until they obtain a reaction from me. On the odd side, I received a call from my half-sister. She started to apologize, but I cut her off since I didn't want to hear it anymore. She then sneered and had the audacity to ask me to keep my nieces while she, her husband, and her boyfriend went on a trip. I adore my nieces and nephews, but I told her she could go by herself. If she wanted me to watch her nieces, she would have to contact my aunt. She started yelling about how I was treating her unfairly and punishing her children. I said I was punishing her. She responded, "Never mind," and that I couldn't see my nieces. This was something I expected, yet it still crushed my heart. I'm very sure she's telling them I despise them. I'm retaining the screenshots, and my aunt and cousin have promised to back me up if they contact me again in the future. Everything that has happened has been incredible, but I honestly believe there will be more. I know one thing about Egg Donor. She hates losing. I know she perceives this as a loss, and she will not stop until she wins. My half-brother has blocked me on everything, and I believe he is siding with my half-sister. I'm simply incredibly emotional right now, but I feel compelled to convey this as positive news. I start treatment next week. My aunt and cousin are already packing Tom's belongings and dropping them off with a friend of his. His name is Kyle. He's on my side and has been a great assistance throughout this process. He dropped off my favorite fruit with my aunt this morning. He also told me that I could chat to him at any moment. I inquired if he would continue to communicate with Tom, and he answered no. He's only holding on to his belongings till his parents can pick them up. I sincerely admire him, but that's all for now. I aim to obtain a restraining order on my egg donor. This has been quite difficult for me, but I appreciate your willingness to listen.